Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our presentation today. I'm just going to introduce myself. So my name is Lori Martinez, and I am a Microsoft Modern Work Solutions Specialist here to help moderate and answer any questions you guys may have for us today. So let me get started with kind of where we're at today and where we've been. So throughout the past year, we've presented on a variety of different topics from security and compliance features to employee experience platforms and quite a few topics in between. And of course, this is all great information, but one that we also want to focus on during your cloud journey is how do you get there? To add to that consideration, a very important next question would be, how do you build the proper foundation to be able to successfully continue to build on top of that moving forward? This is why we also have included presentations around getting ready to migrate your important data in regards to email with Exchange Online, and also the data that resides in storage for personal, collaboration, or compliance reasons. These different types of data, they can reside in various places such as personal drives, network shares, or on-premise SharePoint instances. So if you'd like to catch up on our past webinar that went over the foundations of migrating email to the cloud, I'll be placing that YouTube link in the chat for your convenience, and you can watch that whenever you have time. Today, though, our Modern Work webinar series will continue on the migration of data specifically to SharePoint Online and OneDrive. Please feel free to post any questions that you have within the chat, and we'll do our best to answer. And then we'll also have a few minutes at the end of the presentation for Q&A. So now I'd like to take just a brief moment to introduce our presenters for the day. First, we have Microsoft CSA engineer Greg Rojas. So Greg has been with Microsoft for almost 4 years now and has been working with SharePoint since its first inception as Team Services back in 2001 and has worked with every version since then. His main focus for the past 4 to 5 years has been in SharePoint Online and helping customers migrate their data from the on-premise to the cloud. And as you can see from the slide, Greg is also a U.S. Air Force veteran. Thank you for your service, Greg, and a big fan of modern work, and is a Zumba instructor part-time. So maybe we'll need to see if he'll show us some of his dance moves from that today. Greg's migration mission statement is this: my goal is to bring your data to your fingertips from wherever and whenever needed. So thank you for joining us today, Greg. Next up, we have Microsoft Technical Specialist, Oscar Rangel. And Oscar has over 17 years of professional experience, which includes being a Microsoft certified trainer. And with that comes the knowledge of being a former velocity manager and a former fast track escalation engineer. If you've ever used our fast track services, you know how knowledgeable that team is. So Oscar also brings that holistic experience from assisting numerous customers with their migration needs. Oscar is now a technical specialist focused on modern work and helping customers with their technical questions around a variety of Microsoft Modern Work solutions. And as you can see here, Oscar's not just modern work promoter, but he is also a dedicated father and husband. So now that you're acquainted with our presenters today and understand their solid backgrounds, it's time for me to hand it off to Greg. So take it away, Greg.
Thank you so much. And good morning, everyone. I'm really appreciative that you are taking time out of your day to sit in on our webinar today. Time is one of the most precious gifts that we can ever offer and unfortunately can never get back. So the fact that you're spending your time with us, we really appreciate it. Today, as you are well aware, based on the title of our webinars, we're going to build that foundation. We want to talk about some of Microsoft's best practices, right? We got data, we need to move to the cloud. Everybody's doing the cloud thing, so let's do it ourselves. But the question is how? How do we get there? There's a whole lot of questions in the hows. So let's take a look at, first of all, our agenda that we're going to cover today. We're going to look at and discuss some of the different types of migrations that are available that you can do with our tools. We'll talk a little bit about a SharePoint to SharePoint Online migration. That's primarily the demonstration that I'm going to do for you today. I'm going to show you how to use our tools and migrate some SharePoint on-prem data to SharePoint Online. We'll also talk about file shares to SharePoint Online and or OneDrive. And of course, we're actually going to do a demo. Oscar is going to take over the second part of this webinar to show you a demonstration of moving cloud to cloud, because that scenario happens as well. Maybe you're in Box or Dropbox or Google Suite and you need to move that data to SharePoint Online. Well, the good thing is our wonderful and amazing free tools will allow you to do those things. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about what's coming up next and then open it up for some questions and answers. So we mentioned there are different types of migrations. SharePoint Server to SharePoint Online, and it can go to SharePoint Online, could go to Teams, go to OneDrive. That is entirely up to you. Where you're moving your SharePoint on-prem data to SharePoint Online, or do you want to move it directly into Teams? You can even move maybe My Sites into OneDrive. Lots of options, okay? We also have file shares. File shares, you got that L drive, the Z drive, the X drive with just many gigabytes of data. Well, you're paying for the operating system license, you're paying for the backup license, you're paying for the antivirus license, and then someone's got to work on weekends and nights to patch those things. Not a very fun thing to do anymore. Why not delegate that to Microsoft? Take your on-prem data and migrate it to SharePoint Online or OneDrive for Business. Let us manage that information for you. Okay. And lastly is our cloud to cloud. As you know, as you can see on the screen here, you've got Box, Dropbox, the Google Suite. All of that good information can be migrated directly using our tools from their cloud instances to SharePoint Online or OneDrive. There is a suggested workshop down here at the bottom. If you're interested in, hey, Craig, we're looking at migrating our SharePoint, but we have no idea where to even begin. Or we're looking at migrating our file shares, but also we sat in on your webinar, but maybe we need a little more over the shoulder. Well, there is a workshop. It's called Activate SharePoint Online Migration. It is a fantastic workshop to get you started in understanding and assessing your information prior to moving one bit or byte to SharePoint Online or OneDrive. Okay. I made note to our tools. We have 3 tools. Of course, they all come with the best price ever. Who doesn't like free? All of our tools are free. They cost you nothing. And the best thing also is that they don't come with a per seed or per cal type of licensing. There is no licensing behind it. The SharePoint Migration Assessment Tool, wonderful tool before you start is the tool you use. The SharePoint Migration Tool. Now it says SharePoint, but it can also handle file share migrations. And then Migration Manager. Oscar's going to get into a little bit more about Migration Manager when we use that tool for our cloud to cloud migrations. All right, my favorite discussion, SharePoint. I can talk SharePoint because I've been working with SharePoint, as Lori mentioned, since the beginning of its inception. Back in Team Services, when it first came out, I was like, what is this? We installed it, and we thought it was the greatest slicing bread tool ever. So we used it, and we used it heavily. And we went to 2003, to 2007, 10, 13, 16, and now, of course, we even have SharePoint 2019. I've used every version that we have for on-prem. Love them all, very versed in them. But over the past 4 or 5 years, my main focus was learning how to get that on-prem data to SharePoint Online. And I've worked with customers in the commercial industry, anyone with a .com, .org. I've worked with the state and local government, so .gov. I've even helped DoD customers migrate from their on-prem servers to SharePoint Online and allow them that flexibility of accessing their data anywhere from at any time of the day. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and kind of talk a little bit about our tools. Okay. The SharePoint Migration Assessment Tool. That's your first column. I'm only going to ask you guys to really focus on the bottom bullet there where we have some notes. Those are for your edification, and they all kind of have their minimal requirements for .NET, et cetera, et cetera. And it's all of them, as you can see, make sense. SharePoint Migration Assessment Tool. SMAT is what it's also known as. Love the SMAT tool because this is what takes a look at your SharePoint on-prem environment, the entire farm, and paints your picture. You need to know as the SharePoint admin or as someone that needs to migrate that data from your on-prem to SharePoint Online, you need to know all about your migration. The SharePoint Migration Assessment Tool, the SMAT tool, will give you that information. It'll paint the what's going to go with no problem, what's going to go but may require you to roll up your sleeves a little bit. And then there's also what's not going to go. For example, any solutions you might have installed in your SharePoint on-prem servers. We don't have the ability to install those solutions in SharePoint Online, but it'll identify for you all of those solutions. And there's other things that the SMAT tool will reveal. Part of that workshop, the Activate SharePoint Online Migration workshop, is we will use this tool and analyze and assess your SharePoint on-prem environment, then break it down into the different reports. What goes, what doesn't go, what do we got to roll up our sleeves and do? Okay? So that's the SMAT tool. Then we look at the SharePoint Migration tool. Most folks look at it and say, hey, well, it's going to migrate SharePoint. We don't have SharePoint. We're just looking at file shares. The SharePoint Migration tool can also migrate file shares. And it doesn't have to be a Windows file share. As long as you can connect via SMB, then hey, perfect. We can migrate that information. Okay? And then Migration Manager. Big fan of Migration Manager. Some people ask me, what's the difference between the SharePoint Migration tool for file shares and Migration Manager for file shares? And there's really only one difference. The SharePoint Migration tool will require you to push the button to say, hey, I want you to start migrating now. Whereas Migration Manager will install a small agent on the server that hosts the data. And then through the SharePoint Admin Center, you can say, hey, I want you to kick off tonight at 11 p.m. And that tool will automatically migrate, and you don't have to be online to push that button to say, migrate my file shares to SharePoint Online. So that's kind of quick overview, some of the prerequisites and a little definitions of our tools that we have available for you. And of course, for free. So you're attending this webinar because you're right here. Well, Greg, we're looking to migrate. We have SharePoint on-prem 2013, 16. The SharePoint migration tool and the SharePoint migration assessment tool will eventually, and I mean very, very soon, within the next month or two, will allow and provide support for SharePoint 2019. Currently, they do not. It's 2010, 13, and 16 that is supported, meaning if you ran it and you ran into some troubles, you can open up a support case. 2019 is not supported officially yet, but it is coming. So we're looking at our planning stages. That's why you're sitting in on this webinar, or you're coming back to watch it on the YouTube later on. You're looking to migrate your SharePoint on-prem. You need to get it online. What do we need to know? Well, there's a lot of things that we've got listed in here, and I'm not going to read you a wall of words. I'm hoping by now you've had a chance to scan through all the different columns that you see here, but we're looking to migrate. Are we going to go modern versus classic experience in SharePoint Online? If you were to ask me, Greg will tell you personally and professionally, go modern. You don't want to go classic, okay? Understanding your permissions, what's the difference between permissions and sharing? Gotta know these types of things. After you consider a lot of those discussions and planning, we're going to move over to assess and remediate. That's where we're running SMAT. That's where we're getting those reports. That's where I want to know the good, the bad, and what's the ugly that's going to happen when I migrate my SharePoint on-prem to SharePoint Online. We're going to fix some things, and then we're going to migrate. There is a bullet here in the second column here talking about assess and remediate workflows. Workflows, if the workflows are running, the data cannot migrate because it is still in transit. So just kind of keep those things in mind. And that's what the SMAT tool will also provide you alphabetically from A to Z in SharePoint, everything that you have in your environment. As we continue through the different columns, I always try to make sure we focus on user onboarding. As IT, we've always done a good job of providing our users and our customers the best and latest tools. Hey, check it out. This is the new shiny thing you're going to use. And they're like, oh, but yeah, a lot of buts. What I always recommend to folks is, listen, adoption of your tools is best delivered when you answer one simple question. What's in it for me? If you address that, hey, we're getting a new tool, and answer that initial question, what's in it for me from your user's perspective, the adoption rate is so much more. They understand, oh, I'm getting a benefit because you're giving me a new tool. That's fantastic, okay? So let's look at this is a utopian scenario of a SharePoint server migration, all done in a 4-week span. Can it be done? It's quite possible. Realistically, not always. Okay, but remember when we were looking back at that previous slide, there's even a discussion of should we go hybrid? Maybe you've got a couple of terabytes of data, 100,000 site collections you got to move. It's gonna take more than 4 weeks to migrate. So let's take a look at here this preparation week 1. Right now we're going to say, as the SharePoint admins, we've got an idea. Let's talk to each site owner. Hey, listen, we're going to move your data to SharePoint Online. I need you to be prepared. Okay, so they've got that initial notification. Week 2, now you're creating those jobs using the SharePoint migration tool and scheduling, hey, these first 50 sites are going on Sunday, these next 100 sites are going on Monday, and so forth through the rest of the week. Okay, that's all ready to go. Now you've got your schedule set up. Now you're going to actually migrate the content. Good thing to know, migrations is only a copy of your data. It is not moving it from your on-prem to SharePoint Online, but it makes a copy with all the metadata, created, modified versions, all of that information gets migrated over. Now, after that week of migration, because remember we did jobs for each day of the week on week 2, week 4, now we're going to come up and say, okay, guys, we migrated site owners. I want you to validate. Do you have 312 documents in your document library that you had on-prem? Check the apples to apples. Let them do that information. They can validate it. And of course, while they're taking that week 4 to validate, you're preparing to run that incremental at the end of the week. You save those jobs that you created in week 2. So at the end of week 4, when the site owners say, hey, it looks good, you run an incremental to make sure you true up the data that your users might have been updating during week 4. Of course, at the end of that incremental migration, now you want to go ahead and put your SharePoint on-prem data into read-only mode. Okay? And you go live, and congratulations, you've migrated your content to SharePoint Online. So, Greg, how do I do this? So let me show you. Let me escape out of here real quick. There we go. So what I have here on the left-hand side of my screen is the SharePoint migration tool. It's one of the latest versions that came out. The SharePoint migration tool has gotten better and better every year, every month. We're adding more and more capabilities, more and more functionalities. Things, for example, now we can take SharePoint 2010 workflows and automatically convert them into Power Automate. You don't have to do that now. The SharePoint migration tools can do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through a quick scenario because I got to turn over the slides over here to Mr. Oscar in a minute, but I'm going to walk through adding a simple migration. What I want you to look at is, this is my SharePoint 2016 environment. As you can see, it doesn't have a whole lot of stuff. I've got one library called Second Library with 33 items, documents has 24, and I've got a list with 214 items. That's all I really have. Here is the target destination in SharePoint Online. See, it says SharePoint.com, so we know we're going to a SharePoint Online environment. It's got really nothing in it. So what I want to use is the SharePoint migration tool, and I'm going to say I'm going to add a new migration. Now notice it has 2 options. I have a single source where I'm coming from, or maybe I want to create, a CSV file with these 18 sites. Absolutely. But for the demonstration for today, we're going to take the single source URL, and then it gives me options. How do I want to migrate? Do I want to migrate the whole site, or maybe specific libraries? Or maybe I just want to migrate the workflows. For the demo for today, let's just go ahead and migrate everything in the site. And that says, okay, Greg, what am I migrating? I'm putting in my URL. And I'm going to go ahead and click next. It's going to make sure I have rights, which I already do. So I'm going to say, where do you want this to go? I already have a SharePoint site in mind already for it. If I'm the SharePoint admin and I don't have a destination for it, it can actually build one for me. So check it out. Because it knows my URL on-prem was sites/demo, see back here? If I say, well, let's just migrate this to SharePoint, it'll say, hey, do you want to go here? And it would automatically build that site for me. But because I already have a destination site for it. I got it called Greg Demo Migration. Short. If I click tab, it's going to then check and see, does that site exist? If it didn't, it would say, I'll build it for you. So it's just checking what do we have in the SharePoint Online environment. It's going to say, okay, cool. We're going to copy the content to the site. If the site didn't exist, it would say, we will build the site for you. I'm going to click next. As you can see, most Microsoft tools, and we've all used Microsoft products, whether it's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, whatever it is, they're pretty user intuitive. So far, none of this has been, oh, that's a little hard. I got to make sure I'm taking notes on this part. This, to me, and this is just a Greg's opinion, this is probably the most important step in your entire migration. Why? Because unless you're some kind of savant and you can remember exactly what this means 3 weeks from now, 3 months from now, you're awesome. For me, I cannot. So what I like to do is I'm going to give this a name, Greg's Demo on 1/19/2023. That means something to me. I can refer to this 3 months, 6 months from now, and I'll know exactly what this particular job was for. So now I'm going to say next. Now, Microsoft, the SharePoint migration tool, by default, what you're seeing, these are our default settings. The option number 1 that is currently turned off is to perform scanning. Instead of migrating bits and bytes, it will actually just give you an assessment and say, all of this will go okay, or hey, these files were checked out, we can't migrate them. It's a good way to just kind of get a quick, before I move anything, is everything good to go? Preserving the SharePoint permissions is definitely a must. Now, one thing on that second option in preserving SharePoint permissions, as long as you're doing an Azure Active Directory sync with your Active Directory, and not only just bringing in users, but security groups as well. That's something you want to make sure you address with your global admins. Hey, when we're doing our Azure AD sync, are we also syncing security groups? Because as we all know, best practices in Microsoft SharePoint is to use security groups versus adding users to SharePoint groups. Okay, preserving permission inheritance. So basically, I want to take a snapshot of what I have and bring it to SharePoint Online. Now, I'm going to expand the view all settings because there are some other things I want you to kind of take a look at as we go through here. So there's a mapping tool, an option for mapping users. Hey, for example, you have users that have been in your SharePoint for 11 years, but they've been gone for 6. They're obviously not going to exist in SharePoint Online. How do you want the tool to handle that? Do you want to map those users that don't exist into maybe a SharePoint service account or something to that effect? Okay. Coming down a little bit more, we have a filtering section. You can migrate file version history. That's probably a good thing if your users like to keep their versions, okay? Or you can say, no, hey, we just want to bring over the latest copy, and I'm sorry, you guys are hoarders. You'll be keeping things forever, never, never, never. We're only going to bring in the latest version. Entirely up to you. You have filtering options such as, hey, maybe I don't want to bring things that are 11 years or older, or maybe I don't want to bring over any MP3s or .zip files or whatever the case may be. We in SharePoint Online, as far as Microsoft is concerned, we do not block any extension. SharePoint On-Prem, you do. Most folks do, because in SharePoint Online, nothing will run server side, so we allow everything. It doesn't matter if it's a .exe, a .bat, a command file, a PowerShell script, bring it all. Nothing runs server side. You can also filter out specific subsites. Maybe I don't want these lists or libraries or even content types. This option is very, very, very important to all of you. Replacing invalid file name type characters. So in SharePoint Online and OneDrive, there are certain characters that cannot exist in the file name or folder name. And as you could probably see, it might be a little small, but there's the quote, the star, the asterisk, a tick, colon, less than, greater than. Those characters are considered variables in a URL. So if a folder or file contains that, well, guess what? We can replace it, as you can see in the box right here, by default, an underscore. So the file is still very readable, or the folder is still very readable. Going down a little bit more, kind of like to keep all the settings, but notice you can do certain things. Hey, don't do this, do that, don't do this. So just kind of take a look at some of the settings. Well, the last thing I do like to point out is down here, choose a working folder. Why? Because this buries it, and I apologize, but that's just kind of how the tool is. Whoever's running it, it kind of buries it in your app data, Microsoft, roaming, SharePoint migration. It's pretty buried. But here for this demonstration, I have created a folder called migrations on my D drive. So when I run this tool, when I run this job, all my log information is going to get put into the D migrations folder. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And lastly, it's time to push the button, right? We talked about that earlier. Boom, just migrate. This earlier, I ran it just for practice purposes. It took a couple of minutes for it to run. We're not going to act like we want to watch the paint dry or the grass grow. So Lori, do we have any questions so far in the chat that maybe we can address while we're waiting for this to go?
It doesn't look like there are any questions so far. I have been posting some links, though, on the different topics that you have been discussing, but no questions at this time. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
So what we can do, maybe Oscar, if you'd like, maybe I can turn this over to you and you can do your portion. We'll come back and take a look at this towards later, if that works for you. All righty, then over to you, my friend.
Thank you so much, Greg. That was really impressive. And I'm going to steal the screen from you. Just give me 1 second. And in the meantime, if there's any question that comes to mind, feel free to post it in the chat and we'll do our best to answer as we see fit. So let's talk about migrations coming from FileShare, Box, Dropbox, Google Drive to SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, and Teams. Now, as you probably heard from Greg, we have Migration Manager, correct? And that's the tool we have to handle that type of migration. So let's talk about, and we're going to discuss this, all of these things that we see here. We are going to discuss about the prerequisites. We're going to go over the timeline. We're going to have a quick look of the technical workflow, as well as just review what type of deployment, migration assistant we can get, and adoption resources that Microsoft offers as part of the subscription. And we are gonna finish off with the demo, and hopefully we get some minutes back so we can switch back to see what the results are on Greg's migration. So let's get to it. So prerequisites, right? As you probably know, Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, those are different clouds. And so with that comes different prerequisites for each one of them. Rule of thumbs for the three of them are every single one requires a connector. So when you go to the migration, SharePoint admin migration space, you're going to see all of these options plus other 3 or 4 handful options that you can migrate from. And so one of the prerequisites is to create a connector. And so you're going to create the connector, and that connector must use an account that has at least read-only access to any of the source, regardless you're coming from Dropbox, Box, Google Drive. That doesn't change a thing. You have to have access to those sources. Now, on the Microsoft side, the account you use, it has to be either a global administrator that, of course, that will not be the least permissive account, but it will do the trick for that purposes. But at least you have to be a SharePoint admin account, SharePoint Online admin account, in order to have access to the destination. Now, why we ask for those 2 prerequisites, it's because of the fact that the tool is going to copy the source and it's going to place those files and folders in the destination. And so that's why we need to have access to the source and access to the destination. A quick call out on Google. You might be wondering, well, I know that Google Drive has Google has their own formatting, right, for documents, spreadsheets, and whatnot. So there's a translation table as part of our official documentation in Learn that it's going to explain to you pretty much how it's going to translate. Now, a limitation on Migration Manager for these three type of migrations is the file size migration limit, and that's going to be 15 gigabytes in size, and that's going to be per file. Now, let's move to the file shares, right? Greg also mentioned that for file shares Migration Manager, one of the differences that has, against the SharePoint migration tool is that it does require an agent to be installed on one of the servers that you are hosting for these migration purposes. Now, this Migration Manager agent requires two accounts. The first account will be an account that has at least read-only access to the file share or any shared drive that you plan to migrate, and then the cloud account, which is going to be, again, a SharePoint admin account, which is the recommended, and or a global administrator if you want to choose or go down that path. Another prerequisite in here for file share is going to be the server hosting the data must support SMB 2.0 or higher in order to migrate the data. And of course, same as the cloud-to-cloud migration, you must provide a destination account, which is going to be an account that has access to the OneDrive, SharePoint, and team sites. And again, that could easily be resolved with a SharePoint admin account or global administrator. Now, what are the prerequisites for the migration endpoints, right? So we have those listed as part of the official documentation in Migration Manager. When you head up to the section where it says file shares, it's going to give you like hardware requirements, like what's the minimum SO and minimum RAM and space on disk and whatnot. So I encourage you to go there and check out the official documentation. It will walk you through the prerequisites and the setup process. Now, file share limitation for file shares is this type of migration supports migrating individual files of up to 250 gigabytes, 250 gigabytes. So it's a little bit higher comparing to the cloud-to-cloud migration. So let's talk about the timelines, right? And this is something we have seen with other customers. They start out with the planning phase, doing the discovery piece, which is going to perform the assessment on the source, making sure everything is good to go. We have access to the source, and also learning from the generated reports and logs to see if there's anything like, permissions missing, or the source has some sort of block that it's preventing the tool from accessing. That applies to file share, but it could be also some sort of delegation permissions missing on Box or any cloud services. Now, once we have the planning, right, making sure we are meeting the network performance considerations, such as if you have a firewall or if you have a proxy server, making sure you're meeting the requirements. Again, those are listed out in our official documentation, and making sure we have a change management in process and handle the communications beforehand, right? How much effort do I need to do or make in order to accomplish this and move forward with this project? What are the different stakeholders do I need to reach out to get the approvals in order to have this done, right? To get this migration going. Those type of things go usually on the planning phase. Now, assessing and remediating, right? After we learn from the reports on Migration Manager, if there's any issues to remediate or anything we need to address, this is where we handle and we remediate before even start doing the migration. So if there's any permissions that are going to change, or if there's any permissions that were missing, we remediate those and we move forward to preparing our environment. And on that category is pre-provision the Microsoft 365 SharePoint sites, as well as the OneDrive for Business profiles. Now, you might be thinking like, oh, well, Oscar, it's, a lot of effort creating, or generating OneDrive for Business, right? Profile. So Microsoft provides you with a script that it's nothing but it's going to create the profiles in destination, and it's going to ask you for a TXT files with the email addresses of those individuals that you're planning to migrate, and it's going to generate those OneDrive for Business profiles in OneDrive for Business Online. Now, verifying the Migration Manager agents for file share, and making sure the agents are online. Sometimes, if there was a patch or an update on the server, that could lead to the server reboot or anything. So you may want to check that the migration is looking healthy, it's online, and everything is ready to go for that migration. Now, on this preparing your environment, some of the stuff I can cover as part of the demo, as we are going to walk towards that. But it's important to highlight, making sure the agent is online for file share. Now, migrating, right? That's part of the migration, reviewing what type of offerings do I get within my subscription, right? Am I eligible for Fast Track Center, right? Do I own 150 seats or more? Do I need a special assistance, right? Do I want to work with a partner? There's some partners that are really, really good for migrations, and they do migrations on their sleeve. So thinking about those options that you have available is really important. And then really, really key, as Greg was highlighting, the user onboarding piece, which is making sure the end users are aware about what's coming, right? Preparing them for the change before the migration, before there's any change on their environment, making sure they are well aware of these changes. There are some tools that you can leverage that Microsoft put together for our customers to make sure you're ahead of the curve on these migrations, and also to create awareness and to make end users more familiarized with our tools and with the environment. There are certain things that change, especially if you're coming from a different cloud. The UI and things like that might change from one platform to the other. So this is key, right? And also providing training to your help desk, right? To your administrators, making sure they are prepared for any changes. And if there's any issue, right, to make sure they are capable enough to react to any challenges that may find along the way. Now, this is a translation on how these migrations will occur. And so you will see that users will go to the personal OneDrive for Business profile, and then any team or shared drive will go to a team. And that happens to be for file share as well as for cloud storage. Now, getting a little bit more technical in here, the network configuration, you have to pay attention to any, like I mentioned before, if there's any filewares or proxy, making sure you are whitelisting and you are allowing traffic from the Office 365 URLs and IP addresses ranges that we provide. There's a list, and we can provide the link on the chat as well, that will let you know what kind of IPs or what are Microsoft's IPs. So you know for a fact that IP that is trying to access your environment, it's coming from Microsoft and not someone else. Now, on this flow, you can see step number 1. It will be to download the user's files using the Box admin account. This is just for Box, but this flow applies also for Google Drive and for Dropbox. And so once we have the account to pull the information from the user's profile, we are going to insert that data into the migration tool, and that tool is going to send that data over to our OneDrive for Business profile, SharePoint online or team sites. And then the third step will be the user downloading the files, making any changes, uploading or syncing the files using the OneDrive client on their desktops to their OneDrive for Business. So it's a pretty high level, but this is pretty much how it happens behind the scenes. Now let's talk about deployment, migration, and adoption assistance, right? Something our customers are really eager to learn more. So as I mentioned before, if you own or if you're about to acquire 150 plus seats, 150 or plus seats, you get advisory capacity from Fast Track Center, right? You get an engineer assigned, you get a team that is going to support you and help you answer some of the questions pertaining to deployment, implementation, and so on and so forth. But what if you own 500 or more seats, right? You also get migration assistance, right? And with that migration assistance is migration support, which is a group of individuals who will assist you with questions related to migration, issues related to the migration itself. They will help remediate. You can collaborate with them to pinpoint where the issue is. If there's something wrong with the environment that may require you to take action, you can partner up with them and make sure your migration is successful and as originally planned. Now, if you opt to go for a Fast Track ready partner, right? If you need like white glove services, special services or attention, or you want to have hands-on support, there are some Fast Track ready partners that are approved by Microsoft, and they can help you and assist you with that. This one, though, will not be included as part of the subscription. However, you may have already a trusted partner that you can discuss to see what are the benefits in going or choosing a specific or particular partner. Now, besides Fast Track Center and Fast Track Ready Partner, deployment guides, right? That's something key, and you probably have seen this. And if not, I will highlight really quick once we hop into the demo. These are deployment guides for you to learn and to follow along in terms of deployment, how to implement something. It doesn't only goes for SharePoint, OneDrive, or Teams, right? It also walks you through things like such as Azure AD Connect implementation, right? Hybrid Exchange, and so on and so forth. So feel free to check out these deployment guides. If you have access to the admin center in your organization, if you type this setup.microsoft.com, it's going to land into the M365 admin center, and you are going to get to the deployment guides. It's right; those are right there, and they are pretty powerful. Now, what type of adoption tools, right? What if my end users have questions, or even my admin have questions, right? We have adoption tools. If you go to adoption.microsoft.com, you are going to see from email templates to handle end user communications, all the way to videos about training your admins, the most common issues, the most common questions. So this is really great, and you don't have to pay anything for this, right? Those are for free, so it's fast track, right? You know, as long as you meet these two requirements, you will get either advisory capacity if you are over 150 or 150 or 500 seats or more, you get that type of migration assistance. Before we hop into the demo, Lori, is there any questions we have on the chat that we might need to address?
I think you guys are just way too good at explaining everything, so there's no questions necessarily, but we are continuing to put the links that you guys are discussing into the chat. But thank you, Oscar, for checking.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. So as you probably can see, we are at the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So right here, we are going to hop into, I need to expand this a little bit. Yep, so you can see the whole thing. So we are going to hop into the SharePoint Admin Center under Admin Centers. So it's going to open this up. And under here, we have the Migration Center or the Migration tab. So let's go into here. And right before, let me just go back really quick to the migration, to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So remember I was mentioning about the deployment guides. By the way, this is a demo tenant. So you probably are not gonna see a lot of licenses or information, but it meets the requirement and the purpose of this demo. So all the way down, you are going to see training guides and assistance. And this is where you are going to find things like training for admins, advanced deployment guides and assistance, which is the deployments guides that I was mentioning, and then the training for users. And so if you click right here really quick, you're going to see like what type of deployment guides. You have a search bar in here to search for all the guides and what have you. So it's really, really good. And I encourage you to go check this out. They are really, really, really helpful. Then if you require fast track assistance, this will take you to the fast track website. So it's just pretty self-explanatory, but it's good to create awareness that this is already included within your subscription. Now let's hop back to the SharePoint Admin Center. So under Migration tab, you're going to see all the technologies that we are supporting under Migration Manager Migration, and for the other migration solution, there's the SharePoint migration tool that was covered a few minutes back with Greg. So under Migration Manager, we have file shares, we have Box, Stream, Google Workspace, Dropbox, and Ignite. So we're going to be focusing on Box today. However, I just wanted to really quick go to the file shares migration, just for you to have a little bit more understanding in terms of where do I find things, right? So we have three pillars here. We have the agents, we have migrations, and we have scans. And so under agents, as you can see, one of the things I was mentioning as part of the checklist, right? Preparing, assessing, and making sure you're ready for migrations is to make sure that the agents are enabled. So this is where you will check that thing. And so if you would like to add more agents, this is how you add it, right? You click on add, you download the agent. Usually you do that from the server, or you can download from any server and then just share it via share file or share folders. So that way you have access to those, the installation, right? Then the migrations, this is where you will see your migrations listed at, the global settings. This is something Greg mentioned was Migration Manager allows you to schedule migrations, right? Putting a specific date throughout the week, and then making sure you put some rules in there, like, hey, I don't want to, migrate things over or that were modified after or before that. So this is where you find all those things. This is the list of migrations. It will provide you with information about source, destination, and status. And then if there's anything under scan, this is how you will get there to start your scanning and add your source path in order to start kicking off that migration. But let's hop into the box really quick. So as part of the box or any other cloud migration, you're going to see a tutorial at the top. And so it comes with 3 steps at the very beginning, which is going to be step number 1 will be connecting to your source environment. In this case, is box. Then assessing your box. This will do automatically once you add the source path. And then once they are ready, you will move those to migration list. Excuse me. Now, because I already connected to the box source, this is how you see the connected or online connector. So it's being already activated. Now, if we scroll down in here under scans, we have another also tab that is called migrations, but let's take a look at the scans really quick. This is going to give you a quick overview about, how many files, if there's, a count of folders or files, what's the data size, right? If there's any warnings that require attention, or if there's any source path that has warnings or errors, things like that. So, and you have color coded everything. So it's pretty easy to read. And so if we go all the way down, you guys are going to see a list of scans that were previously performed. And as you probably can see, let me close this feedback window. It provides you with the date where the scan was performed, the status, if it's active, if it's ready to migrate, how many folders, how many files, what's the size, things like that. So it's pretty easy to read. Then you can download reports to make sure, let's suppose we have something that is not ready to migrate that has some issues. You would download the report and the report will give you that information. Now let's hop into, because we are getting close to the end of the webinar, let's hop to the migrations and learn a little bit more about this. So if you were to manually map the identities, right, as I was mentioning, the tool will map anything that matches on the source and destination. But what if they don't match at all, right? What if they are changing email addresses? This is where you will map those identities. You have the option to click auto map if you're making sure, if you are pretty sure that the source and the destination map, you will go with that option. If they don't match at all, you will see it from here. And there's a mapping file that you can download. And so the file, it's going to contain some pillars that you have to fill out. And so this is pretty much is just for reference. If it's a user or a group, then what will be the box identity, how those identities on box are today, and then the Microsoft 365. And of course, you can see from here, it was only one identity that was mapped in here, but you can fill out manually those. It doesn't give you like anything. Now, important thing about this is, let's go back really quick. When we are, let's close this out. If we were to migrate, no, let's go back really quick to scans. If we were to add more source paths in here, right? Let's suppose we want to add the user. So there are 2 links that are right here. The first one is going to provide us information about if there's any limitations in how many sources can be listed in a single file. And so you can see right off the bat, like it's 10,000, right? It has to be less than 10,000. Now the tool also calls out that the tool will scan up to 50 simultaneously on the uploaded values. And then it will provide you with the example and how you would add the source path. So when you get to the point where you're going to add the source path, you're going to see something like this, and you probably might be thinking like, so what do I need to put in here, right? So that's why we have that documentation that walks you through and show you how to do that. And then it will provide you also the information in how you connect the box or any other source. As you probably can see from here, we can see the migration manager reference, we have the file share, we have the box, we have the Google, we have the Dropbox, and so on and so forth. So just hopping really quick in here. When it's ready to migrate, you can copy those to migration from here. And then we got a warning that it's duplicated because I already moved Jen to the other. So that's why it's listed more than once. And it says never run. So we are going to click in here. We don't have a destination from here. But for this one, you would you will click migrate, or you can schedule the migration, right? Remember, this was previously mentioned. You can schedule the migration when and what time, and then it will give you the time where it's going to kick off. So this is Pacific time for US and Canada. So you will just modify this, and then you will choose the day, or you just say do not set a schedule, but then then that means that we are going to migrate. Now
Hey, Oscar.
Yeah.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt. We're about 3 minutes till noon, and we also just want to check on Greg's migration as well. So just giving you a time check here.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the heads up. Really quick, how a log file will look like when we are downloading just for troubleshooting purposes. It will look like this: task ID, source path, destination, if there's any failures, the status of the file, the source base name, and so on and so forth, the source size and everything. So this is one of the reports that you can choose from whenever you are migrating or scanning from the migration manager. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Greg so we can look at the results. And Greg, please take it away from.
Hey, Oscar, that was very, very good. Wow, you got great detail, and I'm loving the fact that we were all able to sit in and listen on that. Very, very good details. Thank you so much for your detailed presentation, Oscar. So you're seeing my screen here. Look, the migration did completed in about 5 minutes. Not a whole lot of data. Notice that, it says 273 total items. Out of 273 went over. That's fantastic. What I would like to do is really quickly is just kind of show you. So here's the numbers here. I had a library called Second Library. I had 24 documents. Over here, I haven't done anything yet. Let me go ahead and refresh, and we should see the Second Library. We should see documents now has 24 items in it, and we have that list with 214 items. So all of the data was copied over. It took a whopping 5 minutes. Now, just so you all know, when a migration happens, a inventory is done of on-prem information. What am I migrating? What columns do I need to bring? What libraries do I need to create? What columns need to be in it? Look up a drop-down menu. So it does all of that inventory in what's called a manifest. Ships that off to the Azure Blob Storage, who says, okay, I'm going to make sure we have all this, and talks to the migration API and says, build these. So all of our data went through okay. It looks pretty successful. I'm quite happy with this migration. Very small, very simple, but this is how your migrations will also look and work. Now, listen, don't be afraid to reach out to us. Reach out to your CSAMs, your dedicated account managers, and ask these questions. Hey, we want to migrate. We're looking to do, but we sat in on this seminar. We need more information. Our documentation, a lot of the links that Lori has put out there will absolutely guide you on a lot more of your migration steps, but you also have the ability to request that workshop, the Activate SharePoint Online migration, when you're looking to migrate your data. I think that's all for me. Lori, I'll turn it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, both of you, Oscar and Greg. Pretty amazing presentation. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your knowledge with us today. Greg, if you don't mind, can you put the that PowerPoint slide back up for me real quick here?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not sharing it, but there we go.
Awesome.
And there we go.
Right on, thank you. There should be a slide, I apologize, towards the end that just shows some of the upcoming webinars that we do have since we're at time. And so as you can see here, we do have Windows 365, your PC in the cloud, and this is coming up on February 9th. And then we will have some additional webinars to provide after this. We're just also in the scheduling and planning stages of those. If you guys have any additional questions, Greg did mention, please reach out to either the partner, your preferred partner that you work with, any Microsoft representatives that you might be working with as well. We're all always happy to answer any questions there. And then within the next day or two, I will have the recording up on YouTube so you guys can watch at your convenience if you need to rewatch anything. And I will be sending out a follow-up email with the information provided in the chat today. Since there are no more additional questions for today, and we are definitely at time, again, I wanted to thank our presenters for today, and then of course for all of our attendees that took the time out of their very busy schedules in this Happy New Year to join us today. So with that, thank you so much and have a great day.
Have a good day, guys.
Thanks, everyone.